yeah. So that Lakers roster, that was a lot of questions here, but
Yeah, you ask me anything. Yeah, that season was actually that should be a documentary. That
yeah,
season, uh, I mean, that was a drama-filled season. One Steve was hurt
yeah,
pretty much most that year. That was kind of uh, his last year, pretty much playing.
yeah,
He was injured the whole time. We started off with Mike Brown as the head coach.
yeah,
Uh, and Mike Brown, I think he's an assistant now with the Warriors.
mm,
Um, I mean, defensive-minded coach, and his practices are like 3 hours, 3.5 hours, like
wow,
long practices. Like you don't do that, especially not with a veteran team. Like that was kind of like a no-no.
mm,
And then we were trying to run the Princeton offense, which
right,
for Kobe, it doesn't matter what offense you have. Whenever time he wants the ball, he's gonna get the ball wherever he wants, and
mm,
he'll just stop the play there. Trying to work, Powell and Dwight together. Although Powell is a great passer as a big and can also stretch the floor as well.
mm,
Them two trying to mesh together didn't quite work as well. And then again, we're running the Princeton offense when you have a guy like Steve Nash who's had a lot of his success having the ball in his hands all the time.
yeah,
You can see how he was kind of uncomfortable. Just kind of, there's times where he's just sitting there and the ball's not in his hands and he doesn't know what to do. For so long, everything went and started with him. Then you had Metta World Peace, who's just a character in his own. It was just, I think obviously, when the team was initially put together, you're thinking championship and things like that. But there were just so many other factors that caused that team not to gel. One, I think the organization, I don't know for sure, but it's kind of how I thought it went and kind of how Dwight thought it felt, that he was going to be that bridge. Like, all right, Kobe's going to be, 1 or 2 more years, and then the Lakers is your franchise. That's kind of what his mindset was going into it. And, Kobe was the complete opposite. Like, nah, like, this is mine. Like, I ain't going nowhere. Like,
mm-hmm,
I don't know what they told you. So they were clashing from the get-go. And I think it's interesting because obviously you mentioned the Jordan documentaries and Kobe's a guy that kind of emulated and imitated Mike. So I think he also tried to do that same way as far as his leadership. And certain guys don't react to it as well, especially if they're established. So like for me it didn't matter. I mean, I've been coached tough all my life, with high school Coach Gay, Scott Skiles in Chicago was a tough coach. So, none of that bothered me. But, Dwight was different. Dwight was straight out of high school, 6'11", phenom, went to Orlando, was the man. Nobody really could tell him nothing.
yeah,
So for another player to challenge him, that was something he wasn't used to. And, he's not challenging him in a nice way. So, that could be a little, confrontational in a way to where Kobe's looking at it and, hey, I got to show you, like, you're not a champion. I got to show you what it takes to be a champion and your work ethic. And, I got to be on you. And, everything has to be perfect and at full speed and, things like that, to where Dwight's a joker and likes to have fun and, kind of like just wants to turn it on when the game comes.
yeah,
And that drove Kobe, crazy. And it just wasn't at that time. And I think Dwight mentioned it later in his interview, since he's back in LA, that he wasn't mature enough, to handle it during that time and understand what Kobe was trying to do for him at that time. But yeah, it was just a whole bunch of chaos because, one guy thought it was him. He's supposed to be the face of the Lakers. one guy who's all ready to face the Lakers, like I'm not ready to give up, face to the Lakers, and just kind of aging guys that were getting injured and kind of on their last legs. So to where it just, we changed coaches with 5 games in the season. So
Wow.
went from Mike Brown to Mike D'Antoni in 5 games in the season to now to do a whole different offense, which doesn't benefit Dwight too well because, as a big, he's got to come and set pick and rolls constantly, kind of how David Lee and I did it, kind of how Steve Nash and Amari Stoudemire did it.
Mm-hmm.
So, but Dwight wants to go and just sit in the post, and that's not how that offense is ran. And then also what it did with Pau Gasol, who could also score on the block, it made him just kind of settle being an outside perimeter shooter. Yeah. So he was shooting way more threes than he normally would shoot. And, because he was just picking and popping, one, he can't roll because Dwight's down there. Like, if Dwight rolls and replays, nobody's following Dwight to the three-point line. So he became more of a perimeter player, which took away from his ability to pass, score on the block, rebound, those type of things. So it was just a whole bunch of things that kind of didn't mesh. I think that team might have needed one more year to kind of find their identity. But, by that time, like I said, Steve Nash was super, super hurt. Dwight was still also coming off of his back injury as well. So he wasn't 100% as well. So it was just a lot of dysfunction. Although it looked good on paper, it was just a lot of dysfunction behind the scenes.